Hello, I'm Tom, an assistant producer in the world of telly, and for as long as I can remember, I've been obsessed with knowing how TV is made, thanks to shows like Doctor Who Confidential and all the behind the scenes features on DVDs. One of my biggest passions is helping to make TV more accessible to those starting out in the industry, as for me, it seemed like a big scary world that was impossible to get into. Getting into TV aims to break down those barriers and deep dive into every single role that we can, from unscripted to scripted. Join me in each episode where I'll talk to a different TV professional about what they do, how they got there, what tips and tricks they can give you, plus some general TV chat. In this episode, I'm joined by Hannah Walker, a casting producer in the world of unscripted TV, who is chatting to me about the process involved in casting, what you should be aware of when casting, her tips and tricks for the role, plus loads more. This is Getting Into TV.
Thank you, Hannah, for agreeing to be on this podcast. I'm very excited to start chatting to you.
Pleasure. Lovely to be here. Thanks for having me.
Obviously, we're here to talk about casting. You're a casting producer. And I've spoken to people in casting before from a researcher's perspective, and I've also done from a drama perspective recently. I've done 3 casting jobs now, and I've learned a lot in different ones. For instance, I've learned how to do casting tapes, etc. So it'd be good to kind of just have a little chat about that. Well, first off, I'd like to just take you back to right when you were younger. What job did you want to do when you were younger?
Gosh, I don't know really. I was always like obsessed with telly and the media. I wanted to phone into radio station to talk to people. I loved watching like live TV, loved watching TV in general. And I did a lot of theatre and drama studies and stuff at GCSE and A level. And I went to university to do theatre as well. So at that point, I sort of didn't really know what roles there were available in
Mhm.
TV. It felt very much like something that other people did that wasn't attainable for me. I didn't know anybody that worked in telly. I'd never met anybody that worked in telly. I remember doing a module in my university degree about television,
Mm.
and it was specifically looking at kind of gender roles in soap operas. Also was a huge Corrie fan in those days. I think a lot of my like peers at uni and stuff were all wanting to go into the theatre. And I was like, hang on a second, like TV is something that I could do. So that was kind of where it came from. But I love watching telly.
Before we carry on with this podcast, I just want to ask, what was your era of Corrie? Because for me, it's like early 2000s, like Richard Hillman, Fred Elliott. I quote Fred Elliott on the daily.
Fred Elliott, definitely. But I'm probably slightly older than you. I'm sure I'm older than you anyway. But mine was kind of the like Toya and Spider era as well. I absolutely loved that. The Battersbys coming in. They were great.
I just wanted to ask, because I think it's things like the things when you're younger definitely do have an influence, I suppose, on what you do. And things like watching soaps. I mean, I love EastEnders now, and you really start to see different characters. I mean, obviously. But you understand people. I know we mentioned Corrie, but what were the shows that got you interested in TV? The ones that made you think this is definitely what I want to do.
Gosh, all sorts really. So I love anything to do with like real people. So any sort of documentary that I could get my hands on, I was like interested in. Big Brother was, I remember watching the first couple of series of that when it kind of landed on our screens and was just completely obsessed. Thought that was amazing. Just real people being on telly and doing something a little bit special and extraordinary.
I've mentioned many times on this podcast that I started out in drama. It's where I wanted to be. Like that's me. I loved drama. I still do love dramas. I love to like just unwind into one. But then I fell into Crime Watch, and I just fell in love with telling real people stories. And I've loved it ever since, working on Amy Dowden's Let's Dance. That was a complete culture shock for me, because it wasn't crime. It wasn't like your heavy documentaries, but I was learning how to tell stories. I had to cut the casting tapes and do the casting for that. And
Amazing.
that was a real eye opener for me. And it was just nice to talk to real people and shine a light on them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a like special thing, isn't it? I don't really know what else there would be in our culture and society where you can take somebody from a very, normal situation and give them an opportunity to tell their story about their lives. Usually the people who get to do that, historically and stuff, are people with a lot of money or a lot of power. But, we get to kind of tell the stories of people who have just come from very normal situations, but have often got really extraordinary stories. I think you'd be always really surprised speaking to somebody that on the surface, might not think they've had something interesting in their life, but they have. Like everybody's got a story. Everybody.
They absolutely do. Sticking to your early days, obviously this podcast is all about getting into TV, and for people that may be at university or this is their first step into telly, I'd love to know a bit about how you got into telly.
So I was really fortunate in a way. When I was finishing my degree, I got to take part in some community arts projects that were funded by the National Lottery. And I got to be involved in them, and they were being filmed all around Bristol. And what that meant was that I got to sort of meet people from Films 59 because we were hiring kit and people who were like working in edit suites and stuff. And I got to chat to those people. And it was from there that I kind of got my first break. I basically, once I'd finished doing those short films for National Lottery, I approached Films 59 for a runner role in their team. And that was my first telly job. I would always say for anybody coming into TV in their junior level roles when they're first starting out, just try everything out because, lots of people that I was working with there thought they wanted to go into production, but actually found a real love for post and stayed in post that you just don't know. I just made sure I chatted to people, spoke to different producers in the edit and that sort of thing. And somebody very kindly passed my details on to the talent managers at the BBC. And then I got a role in production on a series called DIY SOS. And that was my first sort of break onto, production, as a runner. And I started from there, really. Most people are really helpful and want to help you. Just look for opportunity because, you might not necessarily think, oh, you're hiring kit from this company. Oh, that's where your next job is going to come from. But it might. You just don't know.
You mentioned that obviously working in the post house and working on DIY SOS. And myself, obviously starting in drama and going and working on other shows and starting out in Gorilla as well. I never obviously planned on being where I was. Did you plan on being a casting producer? Was that always the route for you? Or did that kind of like not fall in your lap, but was that kind of something that was open to you by working on certain shows?
I didn't know anything about casting producers when I started in telly. I really didn't. I had a very kind of basic understanding of what the hierarchy and roles were. I think that the casting producer role at that time, we're sort of talking 15 years ago now. I don't think it was as defined a role as it is today. And I don't think there was the kind of impetus put on it the importance put on it basically than we see today. So no, I absolutely didn't know that at all. I was kind of going job to job and I was loving being a runner and I was looking for my next step up into being a researcher. And it was as part of researching on DIY that you cast the next family for the show, the episode that you're making. So that's when I first got my kind of initial taste of casting and experience in it, which meant that I could kind of look for those jobs more in the future. I knew I wanted to be in telly. I knew I wanted to be in editorial rather than in production management, but I didn't know what job I wanted at all, really. I just was kind of hoping for the best.
I was happy to be there.
Yeah, yes, delighted, like a prize winner.
So navigate me through your career from DIY SOS to now. How did you go from runner to cast and producer?
I mean, I worked my way up. I worked hard in every role that I did. As I said, I started out on DIY SOS and I was lucky enough to stay on that production for quite a while. And I was a runner and then I became and then I wanted to try other sorts of television. So I went and I managed to get a researcher role on some food programs. Whilst I was on that, I was casting food producers to be on the show as well. So I was still kind of developing those skills. Then I kind of dotted around the industry between the BBC and the independents in Bristol as a researcher and then as an AP. Once I'd kind of become an AP, I was in a lot of roles that took me out on location quite a lot. I was away filming constantly and I was doing a lot of kind of producing on location. But I was really keen to do some more casting. So I got a little bit more casting assistant producer roles. I kind of stepped down, if you like. I'd got a couple of producer credits on a show called Eat Well for Less. And then I kind of took a step down in order to build my experience as a casting producer, because I knew I needed a bit more of that on my CV. So I went and assistant produced in the casting team for Bake Off, and also on a show called Crystal Maze, which basically was amazing experiences on both, such great shows to work on. And it kind of gave me that kind of basis so that when I was then applying for more roles as a producer, I had just a little bit more under my belt, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned there that you took a step down. Is that something? Is that something you'd recommend if, say, you wanted to get more experience in a certain way, and people shouldn't be ashamed of taking that step down?
No, I'd absolutely recommend it. I think it's such a positive thing that you can do. If you're looking to slightly sidestep into a different genre of television, or, work it on, a different sort of program that you've not experienced before, then taking a a slightly lower role is a really positive way to do that. You're more likely from an employer's perspective to be given that responsibility because they can see you've had more senior roles on other productions. So you're, going to be trustworthy, but it gives you a really good foundation of learning on something that you might not know about entirely. Like, every production is different, every genre has its own quirks and differences. So I think it's a really, really positive thing to do. And I don't think anyone should ever be ashamed of doing that. If I was looking at a CV and I could see that somebody had done that, it absolutely wouldn't make me think that they weren't suitable for a role at all. I think it's a really positive thing.
And I suppose one of the worst things you can do, especially in this industry, because it's so crazy, is step up too soon. You want to be able to have them skills. You want to be able to nurture them, and know that when you go for that promotion, that higher job, that you can do it, rather than you're not too sure. You want that confidence.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's giving yourself confidence entirely. And you learn something from every show that you're on. You really, really do. And it might feel, if you've been, a producer on a series and you know that show inside out, and you're one of the producers on it, you can join another team and be like, hang on a second, this is very different to how I work and how that program is made. So it can be really positive to sort of take a step back a little bit and just gain that experience.
Completely. I mean, I've done Crime Watch now for 4 years, so about 8 series. So I feel like I know this show. But whenever I have to leave and go and do something else, so when I did Amy Dowden's Dance Dance last year, that was a complete culture shock. I mean, I'd been a researcher for a long time by that point, and I'd done casting, but it was very much just doing Zooms, and that was it. I didn't do any casting tapes. I didn't cut them. I didn't have to listen to the feedback from commissioners and all that. So that was a massive learning curve for me. And I really enjoyed it. I'm really grateful that I took it in the end. But going to now then, as a casting producer, what was that like? What was that step up like?
I mean, it was quite organic for me. I kind of knew that I liked that side of being a producer. I enjoyed casting people. I enjoy working with people. I've got a natural interest in people and what they do and what makes them who they are. So it was quite a natural step for me. I'd gone back and got that experience as an AP in casting teams. And then I got some more experience on other shows as a casting producer, and kind of just continued in that role for a little while, really. By the time you're at AP level, you're nearly there anyway. It's really a case of experience. I think in lots of ways, a casting producer is just a really experienced casting AP. There might not be that much difference that you're doing in the role. It's just you've got a lot more experience under your belt, and that's why your credit is different. And you're likely to have additional responsibilities
Yeah.
too. But the day-to-day work is often pretty much the same.
Talking about day-to-day work then, what do you tend to do when in the role?
But it really depends production to production, and what people might know or might not know is your team size can vary massively from just a producer and a researcher on a casting team to, maybe even two large casting teams of people. Obviously, the workload changes with regards to that. But overall, as a casting producer, I would say you need to have a handle on everything about that production. You need to know the content of the show, the tone of the show, when it's going out, what time it's going out, what channel, everything. You need to know everything about it in order to make really good informed decisions about who your cast is going to be. So you're imparting that to your junior members of the team, making sure that when they're speaking to people, maybe the APs are chatting to some potential contributors, that you can say, well, I'm not sure they're quite right because of XYZ, or I think they're absolutely right because of XYZ.
Mhm.
So you're doing a lot of kind of team management in that sense. And you have to be across a huge amount of people, both your team that you're working with, but also the contributors. So, as an example, you might be casting 70 people for a show. It's a lot of people to keep across. As a
Yeah.
casting producer, you need to know what stage all those people are at in the process. You need to know who you think is most likely to get through in terms of who's going to be signed off and who isn't. You're reporting daily to the producers above you. You're managing the schedule of the casting schedule that you're working towards. There's deadlines that you have to meet, but also you'll have your other junior members of the team who'll be doing outreach and are trying to, draw those contributors in perhaps and get them to apply for the show. But the role on a day-to-day basis can be very, very mixed between making your own casting calls, casting Zooms, cutting them yourself, meetings with senior members of the team, pitching meetings, and obviously one-to-one chats with your casting team about who they're speaking to, how they're getting on, and what they're doing. So yeah, there's a huge amount that goes on every day. They're generally very busy days.
Yeah, I can absolutely imagine that. I mean, one thing that I really struggled with when I was casting, I got used to it in the end, but when you really like someone, you put so much effort into their casting tape, and then you get told no. And
Yeah.
you'll say, just like, why? Because you put so much dedication. I think that's one thing that's really important to mention is you make these, especially make these relationships with people, and you've got to have a backbone to know that they might not make it.
It's so tough. It really, really is. And I would say that that's something that you obviously get more used to the longer you're doing it, but it still stings sometimes.
It does. It does.
I still have today where, people that I'll put forward and I'll be so passionate about them. And, I've been doing this for a long time. And then we'll hear that it's a no. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
So yeah, I get you.
Talking a bit about the team then, what does your team look like?
So usually you might have a casting intern or a runner at the kind of like most entry junior level of the team. And then you'll have casting researchers, casting APs, and casting producers. You might then have a senior casting producer who is kind of managing everything in a bigger way. It depends on what you're looking for from your cast to how many senior people you need. You might need kind of just a lot of people,
Yeah.
and you can have a kind of larger, more, junior level grouping. But often you might need quite a few casting producers within a team to make sure that you're finding like the right people every time. So there is a little kind of hierarchy there. The most junior people on the team will often be doing lots of outreach, which is kind of engaging with the general public, inviting them to apply if they wish, sharing information on social media, contacting local newspapers, radio stations, that sort of thing, basically drumming up interest in a show. And then their researchers, APs, producers, depending on how much the researchers have got, will be on the phones, and a lot of phone calls every day to contributors to determine who's going to be the right
You're
people.
salespeople, aren't you? I remember trying to sell the dance show to a bunch of firemen, and that was so difficult. I mean, I managed to get a fireman, but it was so kind of just like it was two separate worlds, and trying to sell that. So you've got to be a good salesperson, I suppose.
You absolutely have. You need to be able to win people round quickly. You need to be able to put them at ease. And you need to be able to sell the show. And that's at every single level. That the most junior level of a casting team member needs to also be able to sell that show. If you're going to approach a fireman for a dance show, you need to be able to prove to them why this is a good idea.
Definitely. And it's not
There's
just
a
because
lot-
we want a firefighter. It's just like we can
No.
highlight your world, and it's not just going to be about dance, but we can tell your story, and it's more than just the basics, if that makes sense. It's more than just a dance show. We want good people. You want good characters with interesting stories.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. It's so tough. And it's always harder on like a first series than on a second, third, fourth series. By the later series, you can say to people, have you not watched it? It's on Channel 4 on Thursday. Have a watch. It's on iPlayer. Have a little watch. And you can engage people because they can see something physical. But a first series of any show is really, really difficult to cast because the public, quite understandably, are skeptical. Why should I do this? What's in it for me? Why will I benefit? And in a casting team, you have to have all those answers. And also make sure you're not just contacting people for contacting them's sake. In other cases, you want to, have a good reason to be taking up their time.
What do you wish you knew about casting and I suppose TV in general, before you started working in the industry?
I think in terms of like TV in general, I wish I'd known how much variety of roles there is.
Mm.
I really didn't know that there was so many different types of producer out there. And there are, you can be a development producer, you can be a task or games producer, you can be an archive producer, you can be a quiz producer, like you can be a gallery producer. Like there's so many different roles.
I never planned on being in unscripted, so I was complete novice and to all the roles. But it's just that thing of once you're in the industry, or even when you're not in the industry, just research and talk to people and just look at the credits and see what roles there are, and go to screening skills where they would give you that rundown. Like there are ways to do it nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd always say to people at junior levels, have a try of loads of different types of show. I had a job on a observational documentary when I was like a researcher, and we were following young people around South Wales, and it was filming in nightclubs, and it was filming every weekend, and we were filming across Christmas, and it was really chaotic because you had to just turn up when they were ready for you because it was observational. And it wasn't for me.
People that I think that's really important because like you may do jobs that you necessarily don't enjoy, but you're still learning from them and you're learning, gaining skills that you can then use in other jobs. In terms of casting tapes, it was something that I learned last year how to do and what made a good casting tape. So I'd love to hear from you what you think makes a good one and what should people know about them?
There's a few things I think that I'm looking for with a contributor or on a casting tape. One of them is humor. So if that's like a funny little turn of phrase or the way somebody tells a story, or if they've got like an intentional comic timing, then that immediately draws me in and makes me think that they could be quite interesting, quite fun on program. So that's something that I'm always looking for. And when I'm cutting casting tapes or when I'm asking people to cut them, I would always say put a bit of humor at the top.
Yeah.
You want to see a little bit of their personality and humor and fun right at the beginning of that casting tape so that people are immediately drawn in and engaged by them. And then the other things I'm looking for is a kind of level of vulnerability and openness. So I want to know that that person is willing to tell me their story and that I trust that they're going to be able to do that on camera if,
Yeah.
if they make it onto the program. So I want to know that they've got a level of vulnerability that they're okay with sharing and that I feel that they're going to be comfortable doing that on telly as well.
In terms of casting, are you there throughout the whole production? Or does it end as soon as it's been commissioned to be on the program?
It depends on different shows, but often these days, members of the casting team will remain on the program until after filming is complete, or they'll move on to a slightly different role within the production so that they are still around. And it's really important to have that from a welfare perspective. In terms of contributor welfare and duty of care, having casting team members around that can kind of continually keep in touch with those, unless you've got somebody specifically doing that in a welfare role. Having your casting team still around to, keep in touch with contributors, make sure that they're continually happy with taking part in the program, that they understand what the requirements are from them at different stages is really, really important and really useful. So on most programs I've worked on, I have cast the show and then remained on the program until filming is over and even into the edit, or edit produce sometimes as well. Building a relationship with your cast is really, really important.
You want them to trust you because you're asking them to go on telly, onto national television or international television, and you don't want to make them feel like they feel stupid. That makes
Yeah,
sense?
absolutely, yeah, 100%. And yes, as I said, from a welfare perspective, having, points of contact for your contributors is really, really important. Now, if your casting team can't stay on a production, you need to be able to inform your cast who they can go to next if they have any questions, concerns, who their point of contact is going to be.
Mm.
It's a really, really important side of things. And in casting in general, welfare and duty of care to contributors is of the utmost importance from the moment you start speaking to them. Whether they're cast for the show or not, you have to follow the correct procedure and make sure you're looking after them at all stages.
From an editorial point of view, and I suppose also from a welfare point of view, just touching on what you said there, are there certain people or things that you can't put out on TV that you need to be aware of when you're casting?
Yeah, absolutely. As a casting producer, and I think, it goes for the same for sort of more junior members of the team as well, you're always looking for the subtle cues and hints as to somebody's vulnerability and whether they are in a space that you feel that being on TV wouldn't have a negative impact on them. You never want to put anybody on television where it's going to have a negative effect on their well-being afterwards. Also, we are always looking for subtle clues, hints, and things that might show us that that person isn't perhaps right for the program or the program isn't right for them.
Mhm.
We also work very closely with psychologists. So they will also speak to contributors on our behalf. They will list bits and pieces that we send across to them, and that will help us to determine whether, as I said, it's the right show for them or they're right for the show.
I know obviously you've done, I think you've mentioned 2 roles as a series producer. I just want to touch upon that briefly. Can you just tell me a bit about what a series producer is? What do you do?
Yeah, so it's a real step up for me and something that I'm kind of really keen to get more experience in doing that role. I really enjoyed it. There is a definite step up in terms of responsibility and stress, but all for the good. So you're taking a more editorial view of everything. So you're not just thinking about the casting of the program, but you're looking at the program in lots and lots of other ways in terms of how it's going to, look, feel, the tone of it, everything like that. And there's also a lot more in terms of, management of people. You're obviously looking after a much bigger team as well, having a kind of handle on the kind of overall feel and tone of the show rather than just one aspect of it is really exciting.
I mean, when I stepped up to AP in September, it was exciting. I knew the show, so I felt like I was in a safe pair of hands. But it was nice to kind of have, I suppose, more of a responsibility and more ownership over what we did. And it is that thing of when you step up, it's scary, but you take on that experience that you've already had, and you just go with it.
Absolutely. It was the same for me. I stepped up on a series that I'd worked on since its pilot series. So I knew the show really, really well. And I was working with an executive producer that I knew very, very well as well. So I had somebody that I could go to and say, what do I do in this?
It's good to be able to have that though, and I think that's really key. Is if you can find them productions that you can work on and build yourself on, then it makes it easier to step up, and it just makes the whole experience easier for you. So, focusing a bit more on the tips and tricks for newcomers, then for people starting out in the industry, and specifically on people that I suppose are starting out in casting. From your perspective, what do you look for when hiring younger members of staff?
So there's a few things that I would look for. One of them is definitely people who have got really good interpersonal skills, people who are chatty. You don't need to be the biggest, loudest, most confident, outgoing person in the room by any means, but having the ability to pick up the phone or have a chat to somebody on a one-on-one basis is really, really important. Like we were saying before, in a casting team, you're often selling the show to people. And so you need to have, a strong level of interpersonal skills to be able to do that. The other things that I would look for, I guess it's a real variety, but organization is really key. There's a lot of dealing with lots of different, applications that are coming in, social media posts. There's huge amounts of numbers sometimes on certain programs you might be dealing with quite a large amount of contributors, so being organized and able to manage that is really, really key, and an attention to detail as well. One of the jobs that often junior members of the team might be doing on a program is background checking contributors, and so having a good attention to detail and being able to spot things on their social media posts or online is really, really important. I think something that's useful to have is video editing skills. I worked on a series called What Would Your Kid Do for ITV. We cast for that something like, I think our initial kind of way, because there was various stages to the process of casting these of children. We were casting 5 to 7-year-olds.
Mm.
We initially cast, I think, 120.
Wow.
So we cut we cut more than 120 casting tapes. But one of our junior researchers was a whiz and fantastic at video editing, and she ended up doing a huge amount of the cutting because she was, skilled and she was quick at that, and that was really, really helpful. But the other thing she had was an eye for a story. I could give her the full Zoom and she could pick out the moments. I could say, right, these were the good bits, but she didn't necessarily need me to be able to do that because she had an eye for story and had an eye for character as well. So those are really useful skills to have if you're coming into casting, definitely. And I do think an eye for character is a learned skill. I think it's something that you can develop and you can continue to get better at. But if you've got a genuine interest in people to start with, then you're kind of starting at the right basis, really.
You mentioned earlier about the fact that you've gone from BBC to Indies. How did you navigate that life? Because it can be quite difficult, I suppose. You apply for jobs and you get that rejection. How do you navigate, especially for people coming in? It's so daunting when you get so many no's so early in your career.
It's really tough. I remember, starting out, and I was at the BBC for a little while. And then I was wanting to sort of get into the Indies and try and, see if I could work for some of them, make some programs for other channels. And it's really, really tough because, your CV might look very BBC, and there can be these kind of, I don't know if it happens as much now, but it certainly did when I started out. It's sort of like, oh, you've not made an ITV show before. I never understood that. So it can be really, really difficult. I would just say people should keep trying and make connections, go to networking events that are held, speak to people. Like LinkedIn, I think, is becoming a more popular outlet for telly people to talk to one another.
I remember being in university, my lecturer was like, just make a LinkedIn, but I don't really know what it's for. That's what I remember him saying that. And for years I had one and never really used it. And only in the last year, I started connecting with people, and I mean, it's been great for this. I've obviously met yourself and a few other people that I've had on as guests, and it's just really, it is a really good place to be and just see, I suppose, connect with these people. And this is the thing: is look at the credits and then maybe connect with them and just let them know that you enjoyed that show or something that you enjoyed about that show, because people love that.
Totally. Look at programs that you enjoy watching, find out the production company that makes that program and contact them and say, I love this show. I think it's fantastic. When is it back? I'd love to work on it. People appreciate that you've made that effort, that you've not just, applied for a role that's come up, but you've actually gone out of your way to say, I love this.
There might not be any, but do you know of any training opportunities out there for people wanting to get specifically into casting?
Screen Skills do run a casting researcher course. I would also recommend people look out for and maybe contact production companies about casting intern roles, if that's something that they think they might be interested in doing, because it kind of brings you in at a slightly different level rather than coming in as a runner and working for the whole production as a runner. You're working specifically for the casting team, and I think that can be a really, really good way of getting in. If I was looking at a CV for somebody and I can see that they've, taken the time to attend those courses, that they've educated themselves around the current, climate around welfare and that sort of thing, that would definitely draw me to them for a role, for sure.
this is something that I want to ask personally as well, actually, in regards to CV. When you attend, say, masterclasses or training opportunities, where would you put them on your CV? How would you lay that out and make it known and not taking up too much room?
I'm not a CV expert by any stretch of the imagination, but if you've got a little blurb about yourself, or perhaps some bullet points of like recent training skills that, recent training or recent, additional skills section, then I'd pop it in there. The other place to mention it is probably in your cover letter. In your cover letter, just say like, I've been doing this recently, and I've been, taking on some welfare and duty of care for contributors training through screen skills to build up my knowledge in that area.
I've got one final question for you now. I just want to know, I mean, personally, because I like to make a list the length of my arm, what have you been watching and listening to recently?
Oh my gosh. So I watched The Traitors, obviously.
Great show.
Absolutely
I mean, I
brilliant.
imagine that would be a great show to cast on as well. You're
Kevin
proper
Hart.
looking for characters.
Yeah. I saw a really good interview with the casting producers from The Traitors USA, and they were saying that how they were looking for people that weren't just going to be good game players, but also people that were going to be really gullible. That was a really good one. And as I'm such a reality TV fiend, I've been watching Married at First Sight Australia, The Gladiators. I absolutely love that that's back.
I don't remember it. I'm not sure if it was on when I was younger, or it might have been and I just didn't take any notice. And I thought, why are they bringing it back? This is gonna, like, it just makes no sense why they're bringing it back. And I caught an episode about 3 weeks ago, and I'm absolutely hooked. I love it so much. I love the kind of like camp, like Shakespearean storytelling of the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
It's brilliant. And then it's got this sort of like wholesomeness to it as well, that it just feels, it's so family friendly. I remember it the first time around, I loved it when I was a kid, and now it's great. And then listening to Richard Osman's new podcast is absolutely brilliant.
The Rest is Entertainment. Anyone listening, you should definitely go and listen to that, because it's just, they literally take apart the industry, and in a really, really easy to listen, critical way.
Yeah, it's
really
such a great podcast, and it covers so much. It covers publishing as well. I'm sort of slightly kicking myself that I didn't come up with
Same.
it.
Absolutely. I listened to it and I'm like, I wish this was mine.
So good.
Thank you so much for everything. Is there anything else that I haven't asked you that you just like to mention at all?
I would only probably say, for anybody that's thinking about getting into TV, or thinking that it might not be doable for them, it absolutely is. I think now more than ever, there are ways in which companies are trying to bring people into the industry. There's kind of been a lot in the press about the future of television, and we've kind of hearing a lot, that might be negative. I do think there are going to be exciting parts of the future of the industry as well.
I really hope so. Thank you, Hannah, for everything. It's been so great to chat to you. I mean, personally, just from a casting point of view, it's been great to chat. So I'm sure for anyone listening, it will be a great listen as well. So yeah, thank you so much for giving your time.
Absolute pleasure. Lovely to talk to you. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode, guys. I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you to everyone that has listened to an episode so far. I really do appreciate it. I've got a few more episodes planned. I've got one with a true crime editor, I've got one with a director, and I've also got one with a VFX producer as well. I really can't wait to bring you the coming episodes. It's really, really exciting. If you have any questions that you want answering, please feel free to get in contact at gettingintoTV@gmail.com, or just search Getting Into TV on Twitter and Instagram or on LinkedIn, and you'll find me, and I'll happily answer a question or point you in the direction that you need to be in at least. But yeah, thank you so much for listening this week. Make sure you give a review everywhere, wherever you listen to your podcast, and I will see you in 2 weeks. Bye.